No, I would not want to live in a world without dragons, as I would not want to live in a world without magic. For that is a world without mystery, and that is a world without faith. R.A. Salvatore.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Lee Hull.
And I'm Lee Esses.
And we all know the best books have magic.
A lot of the good ones do, that's certainly true.
So today's episode is going to be more about laying a foundation for understanding how the world works before the story even begins. Within a TTRPG space, there are very defined, very structured rules for magic specifically. You have entire sections of books dedicated to all of the spells, to who can use what spells, to what levels you have to be, the components that you have to have. It is very well defined. And that can really help make a more powerful story experience because it gives limitations. It gives structure to the system that makes the entire world work.
When talking about how to use D&D and TTRPGs in storytelling, this was one of the first things that came to mind for me for this whole season, because D&D is really useful as far as organizing that magic system. The thing that makes your world unique and special, starting from an understanding of how the gaming world approaches magic, can be very helpful in understanding how you should approach magic. A really useful way to approach designing and organizing your magic system for whatever particular story you're telling is to start with its limitations.
The most common within TTRPG is somatic verbal materials. You'll see that in the little quotes next to a spell in the player's handbook. It'll say VSM if you need all of those things. Anything that says V or verbal requires you to be able to speak, which is why silence keeps you from using any spells that use a verbal component. So that's just one example of a limitation that you can have in your story. And limitations are really good because it provides the basic structure of what isn't possible. If you have a magic system that can do literally anything, then what is the story?
Quick. If you were to explain the magic system in Mistborn, what is the first thing you talk about?
Burning metals?
Yep. That is not only a cool element of how the magic works, but it is an introduction to its limitations. You need to have the metal inside of you in order to access it in order to do the thing. So when you're looking at designing your own system, not only those limitations are a good place to start, but the next thing to look at is how magic is sorted. So is magic sorted as charms and arcane magic and herbology and potions? Or is it sorted as these different elements? When you sit down to organize your magic system, how do you sort the types of things that you can do?
So in TTRPGs, again, I'm going to use D&D as the example, though I think Pathfinder has a very similar structure to theirs. They will break down different types of spells into different categories that include things like abjuration, alteration, conjuration, divination, enchantment, illusion, invocation, and necromancy. And all of these give you a category, a type of magic that works. So some people are going to be resistant to enchantment spells because they're an elf and they're hard to charm. You can only use necromancy on certain kinds of beings or whatever. It gives you, again, limitations to work within.
It also gives you an idea of how the magic works, how this particular spell works, beyond just the thing that you're trying to accomplish. I'm trying to heal your arm. What classification does healing fall under? Is it its own classification? Or is it, like in the later versions of D&D, is it a necromancy type ability? So when you are sorting your magic system, when you're organizing it, you can do things like the 5 senses, which are a key way that spells are crafted in the Dresden Files. You can do the 4 elements plus will, which is kind of how I approach things in my Paracosm series. You can do something like, this is the type of effect that we're trying to accomplish. So that's more D&D, fireball versus giving someone nightmares. Or you can have it be about the execution itself, which is more of a Harry Potter, of making something levitate is a charm effect.
Either way, defining your categories first is a very helpful approach for figuring out how your magic system is used. You can define the desired effects and then figure out which facet of the system it applies to. But either way, having categories, having structure around how your spells work creates more powerful storytelling because there isn't just some magic button that they can always press to get them out of bad situations.
Once you have magic sorted and you have these limitations kind of figured out and in place, the next step is how will the characters use it? This is where I think playing D&D, playing these TTRPGs can be super helpful because your players are going to min-max and exploit and find these loopholes. Well, it says hold water. I'm just holding the blood in their system so that it stays in place. These kinds of hacks that the players are going to try to create within the system, you as a DM are then challenged to figure out how to counter that or how to nerf it entirely if it's something that silly.
And then taking all of that knowledge to the storytelling space, writing your books, will help you create characters who are using the magic in interesting and innovative ways that will help them get out of difficult situations. Like in Mistborn, some of the ways that Vin chooses to use her magic is different than how she was taught, is different than how people expected it to be able to be used. But because she was exploring and pushing the boundaries, she was able to be more powerful than other people around her, even though technically she had the same capabilities. Something that we do recommend is leaving some room for vagueness until the story needs it. If you get so in the weeds about developing and structuring and defining your story, you may work yourself into a box that you can't get out of, that your players can't get out of. And so allowing some flexibility, allowing some vagueness can still help you tell the story within the rules that have been set.
The last thing that I want to bring up as far as how TTRPGs address magic is how your character acquires magic. In most books, it's all the same for everybody. Everyone gets these magic gemstones that they can then channel magic through. Or you have to be studying at this school before you can acquire magic. D&D takes a little different approach.
You have several different categories. You can have something like a sorcerer, where you have magic inherently through your bloodline. Maybe someone back in the day got a little freaky with a goddess, or somebody back in the day got a little freaky with a dragon. Whatever it is, you have magic inherent in your bloodline.
You could also have a cleric. So in the D&D world, your magic comes through prayers and however you worship the god. Sometimes that can be something as simple as helping the poor or healing your party. You have a divine gift and a mission that goes with that gift more often than not. But the power is external in order to help you accomplish your goals.
And you have a couple of subcategories of that. You have something like the cleric mentioned, where it is solely based on their belief and their worship. So long as they believe and they worship, usually they continue having access to the gift. On the flip side, you can have something like a paladin, where they are bound to an oath. And if they break that oath, then they lose access to those abilities. They lose that connection with their divine power until they do something to make up for it.
And you also have the warlock, which is a skewing on the cleric. It's not necessarily a god, but you have some sort of patron that gives you a small variety, but an incredibly powerful type of thing that you can do in order to fulfill the patron's goal.
You don't inherently have to have any of these, though, to have access to magic. You can be a wizard, which in the D&D world, you just study. You're a book nerd. You read a lot, and then you got magic through that.
If you are doing something more of a sci-fi, that's going to be your scientist. You understand how the nature of magic works at its core, and you know which threads to pull on in order to get something cool to happen.
And somewhat connected to that is your artificer, where it also comes through study, but it is tinkering with things. It is creating magic through technology and combining those two together to create magical things.
And often imbue things with magic. So it's a standard anvil or a standard drink or a standard whatever, and they give it a magic attribute on top of it, so that the magic can travel to whomever you want instead of being stuck to a person.
And then usually your final category is your druid. The magic comes from the earth itself. It comes from nature and your connection to it. And you have a mission, a goal to protect nature or to make sure the world stays in balance or whatever it is. But it is all very natural magic. So you'll see a lot of plant magic, a lot of animal speaking communication sort of magic.
The long and short of it is magic is cool, but it doesn't solve every problem. If you're designing a very good system for your either book or D&D world, then magic should have its limitations, and that's what makes it interesting. Finding their way around the rules, within the rules, these kinds of things, a lot of players really enjoy that. It'll be up to your characters to manipulate the magic in a way that accomplishes their goals, instead of magic itself solving the problem. So once you've designed it, it ends up like any other storytelling tool. The main difference being magic is like 10 times cooler. So when you use it,
Right, selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.